We begin tonight in Washington, where federal agencies are now being directed to prepare for a potential government shutdown looming on October 1st. In an internal memo obtained by Fox News, the White House Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, has instructed agencies to draw up reduction-in-force plans. These plans go a step beyond the typical furloughs associated with a shutdown. They would involve issuing layoff notices to all federal employees working on programs that are not legally mandated to continue if and when funding lapses. The guidance states that once Congress eventually approves appropriations for the 2026 fiscal year, agencies would then revise these plans, retaining only the staff essential for core statutory functions. The White House memo places the blame for the potential shutdown squarely on congressional Democrats, accusing them of breaking with the bipartisan tradition of passing short-term funding bills. The memo cites what it calls insane demands, including $1 trillion in new spending, as the primary obstacle. The administration has thrown its support behind H.R. 5371, a bill passed by the House that would extend current funding levels through November 21st. However, the White House says this clean continuing resolution is being blocked in the Senate. Despite the directive to prepare for layoffs, the memo concludes with a stated hope that a shutdown can be averted, saying, "We remain hopeful that Democrats in Congress will not trigger a shutdown and the steps outlined above will not be necessary." The White House has not yet commented publicly on the memo. This budget battle is not the only front on which the administration is facing significant challenges. A federal judge delivered a notable legal setback to the White House yesterday, ruling its policy of withholding emergency funds from so-called sanctuary jurisdictions is illegal. The decision came from the U.S. District Court for the District of Rhode Island in a case titled Illinois versus FEMA. The judge declared that the administration's restrictions on Federal Emergency Management Agency grants were both arbitrary and capricious, and a violation of the U.S. Constitution's spending clause. The lawsuit was first filed in May by a coalition of 20 states. It directly challenged an executive order President Trump issued on January 20th of this year. That order directed federal agencies to withhold funds from states and cities that refuse to fully cooperate with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, in the removal of undocumented immigrants. This policy has been a key tool in the administration's efforts to compel local cooperation on federal immigration enforcement. The ruling effectively blocks the government from using these critical emergency funds as leverage in the ongoing and contentious debate over immigration policy and enforcement practices across the country. While that legal battle sees a definitive ruling, another potential high-profile case is just beginning to take shape. According to sources, the Department of Justice is nearing a decision on whether to prosecute former FBI Director James Comey. The potential indictment stems from allegations that Comey lied to Congress during testimony in September of 2020. A federal grand jury is reportedly underway in Virginia, actively examining the matter, and a decision on whether to bring charges could be announced any day. At this time, the specific details and the full extent of the potential charges remain unclear. This development adds another chapter to the long and contentious history between President Trump and the former FBI director. Comey's handling of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails in 2016 and his subsequent firing by President Trump in 2017 set off a chain of events that included the appointment of a special counsel and years of political and legal fallout. An indictment against Comey by the current Justice Department would represent a dramatic escalation of that long-simmering conflict. We will continue to follow this developing story as more information becomes available. From domestic legal matters, we turn to U.S. military action abroad. The Trump administration is significantly escalating its campaign against drug cartels, authorizing direct military strikes in the Caribbean that are raising sharp questions in Congress and stoking concerns about a wider conflict. President Trump has personally signed off on a series of U.S. military actions, resulting in at least 3 deadly strikes against vessels in international waters alleged to be smuggling drugs from Venezuela. These actions follow the administration's decision in February to designate several powerful cartels, including the Sinaloa Cartel and Tren de Aragua, as foreign terrorist organizations. That designation provides a broader legal justification for the use of military force. The operation is supported by a naval buildup in the region, which began in August with the deployment of several U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers. According to Jeff Ramsey, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, this gives the U.S. the capacity to conduct strikes not only in international waters, but potentially within Venezuela itself. Ramsey warns of a real risk of escalation, noting that such actions could destabilize Venezuela and spark an internal armed conflict with no clear endgame. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has fiercely condemned the U.S. actions, calling them a criminal and bloody threat, and part of a larger effort to achieve regime change. The Trump administration does not recognize Maduro as a legitimate head of state. Back in Washington, some lawmakers are questioning the legality of the strikes. Senators Adam Schiff and Tim Kaine have filed a war powers resolution that would block U.S. forces from engaging in such hostilities without congressional approval. Senator Kaine stated the administration has refused to provide basic information about the operations. Despite the pushback, the White House is signaling it will continue. After the first strike, President Trump said others would now think twice. And Secretary of War Pete Hegseth was unequivocal, stating, "Anyone else trafficking in those waters who we know is a designated narco-terrorist will face the same fate." The use of executive and military authority is also at the center of another major story developing at the Pentagon. Officials there are preparing to formally ask President Trump to authorize the execution of Nidal Hasan, the former Army major convicted in the 2009 mass shooting at Fort Hood, Texas. If the president approves the request, it would mark the first execution carried out by the U.S. military in more than 60 years. Hasan, who was an Army psychiatrist, killed 13 people and wounded 32 others when he opened fire inside the base's Soldier Readiness Center on service members preparing for deployment. During his trial, Hasan admitted to the shooting and claimed his motive was to protect the Islamic Empire from American forces. The attack was initially classified by the Pentagon as an act of workplace violence, a designation that drew intense criticism from victims' families and lawmakers who argued it ignored the clear terrorist motivations. In 2013, a military jury convicted Hasan on all charges and sentenced him to death. He has been held on military death row at the U.S. Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, ever since. After years of legal challenges, his final appeal was rejected in April of this year, clearing the way for the Department of War to advance the execution request to the president. In a statement to Fox News Digital, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said, "I am 100% committed to ensuring the death penalty is carried out for Nidal Hasan. This savage terrorist deserves the harshest lawful punishment." Hasan is one of only 4 inmates currently on military death row.